What's good? It's Woog. On a weekend full of good and interesting fights, this one, besides maybe Tim Tszyu versus Sebastian Fundora, is the most talked about. We've got Rolando Romero, 15 wins and 1 loss, defending his, Rolly Romero is the champion, defending his WBA super lightweight title against Esau Pitbull Cruz. 25 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw. This is Rolly Romero's first title defense after winning a controversial TKO, 9th round TKO over Ishmael Barroso, who we just recently saw knock out O'Hara Davies. Barroso, aging old 40-plus-year-old fighter with a nice left hand, and who I hope gets another good fight after these back-to-back fights against Rolly Romero and O'Hara Davies. But this is going to be Rolly Romero's first title defense since winning that controversial win where Rolly Romero got dropped like in the 3rd or 4th round, and then he started to battle back. It was a pretty competitive fight, but I thought that he was losing on the scorecards. He hurts Barroso, drops Barroso, and he kind of has Barroso in some trouble, but the timing of the stoppage just seemed like it was way premature. Tony Weeks stopped the fight, and that was the first of a couple very controversial stoppages that Tony Weeks officiated. And it got so many people just kind of speculating, like wondering if this was a fix, if this was like meant to make Rolly Romero a champion at all costs, damn near. So Rolly Romero didn't really gain a lot of boxing community respect with that win, even though it made him a champion. First of all, it was just odd that he had this title opportunity, him and Ishmael Barroso, because Rolly Romero had never even competed at 140. His last fight before that was that knockout loss against Gervonta Davis. So he returned to the ring like a year later, fights Ishmael Barroso for a title shot. So that was just really puzzling. A lot of people just look at Rolly Romero right now as being a paper champ. Not that he's totally talentless, like he's a pretty good athlete and he's got a really hard right hand. So he's a hard puncher. He's got pretty decent timing. He can move well when he's cognizant about moving. But I think the issue that people have with Rolly Romero is that he talks so much trash. And it's just one of those things where somebody's mouth is giving them a reputation and more exposure than their in-ring accomplishments really merit. So he's almost Blair Cobbs-like. Remember Blair the Flair Cobbs, who is supposed to be fighting somebody pretty good soon, I think. And Blair Cobbs beat Maurice Hooker recently, granted a seemingly over-the-hill Maurice Hooker. But Blair Cobbs isn't a bad fighter. He's got the stoppage loss to Alexis Rocha, but I think that a lot of people take issue with him because for a moment he became a bit of a thing, like he was a name because of his antics and his trash talk. Rolly Romero basically talked himself into a title fight against Gervonta Davis. Granted, it was the lesser WBA lightweight title, but he talked himself into a Tank Davis fight when his biggest wins were against Anthony Yiggett and a controversial decision win against Jackson Mariñez. So yeah, a lot of people are just not really sold or anywhere near sold on Rolly Romero. And as he prepares to defend his title against Esau Cruz, I'm really wondering if Rolly Romero, who had been out of the ring with an undisclosed either illness or injury, I'm just wondering because, he fought once in 2022 against Tank Davis, fought once in 2023 against Ishmael Barroso, and so now about 9 months, close to 10 months after that, he'll be returning to the ring. So he hasn't been very active in the last couple of years, and I just wonder if he's 100% okay. So he's about to defend that WBA super lightweight title against Esau Cruz Pitbull, who's actually making his super lightweight debut. So that's another odd thing. The fact that they kind of pieced together this title fight in a very stacked 140-pound division. They're going to give a title opportunity to Esau Cruz, who lost to Tank Davis like 3 fights ago, and then he fights Yorki's Gamboa, a totally over-the-hill Gamboa, demolished him in 5 rounds, demolished a pretty good fighter in Eduardo Ramirez, Zordito. Eduardo Ramirez is pretty good, but he was a pretty good featherweight. He was basically fighting 2 divisions up when he fought Pitbull. Pitbull took him out in the first couple of rounds, and so he stopped those 2 fighters, and then he fights Giovanni Cabrera, a very little known Cabrera, who actually has a fight on the same day as this Tim Tszyu versus Sebastian Fundora fight card with Rolly Romero and Esau Cruz. Same day in San Antonio, Giovanni Cabrera returns to the ring, but Esau Cruz, after beating Gamboa and Eduardo Zordito Ramirez, fights Giovanni Cabrera, and Cabrera, it turns out, moves pretty well. He's a pretty, slick defensive fighter, and this ended up being a split decision win for Esau Cruz. Esau Cruz did not look good. He was like chasing the guy the whole fight. He wasn't really landing his best stuff. He couldn't really get inside anytime he wanted to. Like, usually the guy just has this relentless attack, and it just seems like he is glued to the opponent's chest, and he's just all up in the mix, just all over him. He wasn't able to get there with Giovanni Cabrera. So Cabrera boxed really well. And again, this ended up being a split decision, and it was just puzzling because most people didn't really know much about Cabrera. So we just thought that this was going to be another opponent that they were feeding to Pitbull to kind of showcase Pitbull for, at the time we thought maybe he was going to get a rematch against Tank Davis. Well, Esau Cruz did not deliver. He did not deliver big. He won the fight, but that was just about it, and he looked very ordinary. So now he's going to be fighting up a division against somebody who hits pretty hard in Rolando Romero. So I'm wondering again, is Rolando Romero totally okay? And was that Esau Cruz versus Giovanni Cabrera fight, was that an aberration? Was that something that we should just kind of dismiss as maybe Esau Cruz didn't train as hard? He took Cabrera lightly. Maybe he didn't do any film study. He just thought that this was just somebody else who was going to be a doormat, basically. Maybe that's the case with Esau Cruz, or maybe there was a stylistic challenge that Giovanni Cabrera brought to the table that could be exploited against Esau Cruz. Now, I'm going to rewind back a little bit. Esau Cruz looked good against Gervonta Davis. Gervonta Davis, I felt, badly hurt his hand. His left hand, his signature left hand, was badly compromised to where it seemed like Tank Davis didn't even throw that punch for several rounds towards the end of the fight. Esau Cruz ended up losing a unanimous decision against Tank Davis. Many people thought that he either, deserved a draw or maybe even a win. That was a very close call for Tank Davis. And Esau Cruz, even in the early rounds, was making it pretty competitive. Just rewatch the first round alone, and you could see that Tank Davis was going to have his hands full. He was trying to time Esau Cruz coming in, but Esau Cruz, again, just had this relentless attack. He had Tank Davis backed up against the ropes in moments of that first round, and the crowd got pretty excited about it. I thought Tank Davis started making good adjustments, and then it just seemed like something went really, really wrong with his hand. At the time, I thought maybe it was a shoulder injury where Tank Davis kind of slipped, fell back, and he grimaced, and he looked like he was in pretty bad pain with something dealing with his left. So that ended up being a really close and competitive fight. And I feel like Esau Cruz has kind of taken that momentum and the momentum that he had prior to the Tank Davis fight, and he's built this reputation that he really hasn't capitalized on. It seems like a lot of the people who've wanted to fight Esau Cruz, supposedly like Shakur Stevenson, they haven't been met with equal interest from the Esau Cruz side. So the frustration in witnessing Esau Cruz's career post Tank Davis fight is that he's been fighting a bunch of no names when it seems like there are a lot of guys available for him to fight, whether that's because PBC is not willing to make these cross promotional efforts, because PBC in certain divisions, certain promoters have deep stables. In other divisions, certain promoters don't have deep stables. So if it wasn't going to be Gervonta Tank Davis, it's like, who in the lightweight division are you going to match Esau Cruz with? So I'm wondering if that's why he's coming up a division, because they've got Rolando Romero available on their roster, and he's not one of the better champions who Esau Cruz doesn't have a good chance against. So Esau Cruz going into this title challenge against Rolando Romero is actually a pretty significant betting favorite. He's like a -240, where Rolando Romero is like a +240, like a almost 2.5 to 1 underdog. The champ is. So how do I think this one is going to play out? Rolando Romero isn't as smooth and fluid a mover as Giovanni Cabrera. So I kind of do not think he can pull off the Cabrera game plan. Like, he's not a terrible mover, and he can move laterally, but then he has to kind of settle in and plant his feet before firing shots. Giovanni Cabrera seemed like he was a little bit more slippery, and it just seemed like the movement was a lot more natural for him. But I'm assuming that at some point of the fight, probably pretty early, I'm expecting Rolly Romero to be on his bike a bit. Like, I don't think he's going to be comfortable trying to time Esau Cruz, especially again, if this Esau Cruz that comes in to fight Romero looks more like the relentless Esau Cruz Pitbull that we're used to seeing, because again, I don't think Romero is going to be moving as well as Cabrera. If Esau Cruz is coming in with that same, I'm going to keep on coming in to take your head off and take your body out approach, I think Rolly Romero is going to want to be on his bike. Rolly Romero, again, he's a hard puncher, but he doesn't throw a lot of volume. He's almost waiting for you to make a move, and then he's going to react and try to hit you. Like, that's how he fought Tank Davis. Like, if you watch that, I thought Rolly Romero won multiple rounds against Tank. A lot of fighters, I feel, win multiple rounds against Tank before getting stopped, right? But Rolly Romero was able to present enough of a threat where Tank Davis, who's a lot more defensive minded and more cautious than Esau Cruz is. Esau Cruz kind of comes in with a little bit of a reckless abandon. He has a high guard, but he also stays really low and then explodes either to the body or up top. Tank Davis is a little bit more back foot. He's going to wait for you to make a move and he's going to move on that. Sometimes you'll see him start walking his opponent down when he's comfortable and then he starts coming forward. But Tank Davis was kind of waiting for Rolly, who was waiting for Tank. So there was kind of a little bit of a standoff where Gervonta Davis wasn't really getting the better of those exchanges. So Rolly Romero had some success before walking into a punch. You know, Tank Davis set the trap. Rolly Romero fell for it, got caught, got stopped. That was that. But Rolly Romero, he's going to have a whole different issue with Esau Cruz's aggression. And as good of an athlete as Rolly Romero is, and as explosive as he is, he does so many things technically wrong that I think are going to leave him very vulnerable against Cruz. Like, once Esau Cruz starts going to the body, I'm curious to see how Rolly Romero reacts. But if you watch Rolly's fight against Ishmael Barroso, the guy just drops his hands. Like, he's almost expecting you to throw just 1 to 2 punches, and then he'll throw his counter and maybe 2 or 3 counters. Again, he waits for pockets to unload, and when he unloads, it's usually 2, maybe 3 punches. He's not a high volume guy. But when Ishmael Barroso decided it was time for him to ambush, whenever he put more than 2 punches together, he would catch Rolly, because Rolly likes to kind of take a step or a hop backwards. As soon as he sees you coming forward, he'll take a big step back. He's kind of a strider in that regard. He'll take a big step back or a whole hop, like a jump back, and then he'll start moving to the side. So he'll react. When you come in, he'll take that step back. But if you throw more than 1 to 2 punches, usually one or both of Rolly Romero's hands are at least this low or lower to where you could catch him with that 3rd or even 4th punch, because once he takes that first hop back, he doesn't take that 2nd step back or to the side. He'll take a step back, and then often he'll be back near the ropes with his hands kind of down. He's vulnerable in those cases, and I think that Esau Cruz's sustained pressure is going to cause all types of issues for Romero. So I kind of boil this down really to Rolly Romero having a puncher's chance. Now, he's a lot bigger than Esau Cruz. Like, when you look at their measurables, first of all, you'll see some conflicting information on Rolly Romero. Like, Wikipedia has him listed at 5'7" with a 66-inch reach, whereas BoxRec has him listed at 5'8" with a 68-inch reach. So he's an inch taller with an inch more of reach, according to BoxRec. No, 2 more inches of reach on BoxRec, 1 inch taller, right? So I wanted to see what they look like when they face off, when they look at each other face to face. It, like, Esau Cruz is like 5'4" with a 63 and a half inch reach. So Rolly Romero doesn't have that long of a reach. A lot of people who are like 5'8", they might have like 70-inch reaches. Well, whether it's the 66 if you believe Wikipedia or the 68 if you believe BoxRec, given the height, Rolly Romero has relatively medium length arms. He doesn't have a long reach, but he's going to have at least a couple of inches in reach over Esau Cruz. And if you believe the measurables, somewhere between 3 and 4 inches of height over Esau Cruz. But I wanted to see them face to face, and yeah, Rolly Romero looks every bit of 3 to 4 inches taller than Esau Cruz. And I always thought that Rolly, just build wise, was a big lightweight. So he's going to be, he seems like he fits pretty well right in to 140, whereas Esau Cruz was a small lightweight. So he's going to be a really small 140 guy at 5'4", and he doesn't have like a big build. And I mean, you wouldn't want to see a Esau Cruz with a bit of a tummy and some flab around him. I don't think that would be the best version of Esau Cruz. So I wonder what he's going to look like at the weigh-in. I wonder what he's going to look like in the fight. And is the added weight going to reduce his movement and aggression and, cardio and just a relentlessness in any way? Is it going to reduce Pitbull? I wonder, but let's assume that it doesn't. I think Pitbull will be all over Rolly. I think that I'm wondering if he's even going to have one round of feeling him out, or if he's going to come right in and try to get right into the pocket with Rolly, again, who can counterpunch and lead punch pretty dangerously. Esau Cruz is going to have to respect that to a degree. But once the bullets start flying, Rolly Romero, again, has a puncher's chance, but I don't trust Rolly's chin. I trust Esau Cruz's chin, who went the full distance with Tank. I don't know if he would go the full distance with Tank if Tank was fully healthy with a good left hand that whole fight. Because again, he started timing some left hands and uppercuts and so forth. He wasn't able to use that late in the fight. But Esau Cruz seems to have a pretty durable chin. Rolly Romero, not so much, at least not as far as I've seen. I don't like to make too much of sparring footage, but I've seen him get floored in sparring. Again, let's not even make a lot out of that. He got stopped by Tank Davis, which you could argue, who doesn't? And he got dropped by Ishmael Barroso. And he got pretty stuck and wobbled a little bit in another part of that fight against Barroso. So I trust Pitbull's chin more than I trust Rolly Romero's. I think that the only way that Rolly Romero goes the distance is if he makes this a big stinker of a fight by moving and basically running, staying on his bike, moving and clinching a lot. I expect him to try to clinch as much as he can. I think he's going to start getting caught. I think he's going to be worried about the body, going to get caught up top. So I think he's going to get dropped at some point. The question is, does he get dropped and eventually stopped? Or does he get dropped and keep moving and find a way to make it through the full 12 rounds? I'm going to give Rolly Romero the benefit of the doubt. Look, again, he does a lot of things wrong technically. I think I could see him get blasted, but I think that him being the much bigger fighter is going to help him a bit in this case. And I think that added size is going to, and plus, the bit of craft that he does have, I think it's going to allow him to lose an uninspired decision. But I don't know if it's going to be considered valiant and he showed a lot of gusto and made it the distance. I think it's more likely that it's going to be, I think that he might get showered with boos for the amount of clinching and moving around that he's going to do once Esau Cruz strikes some fear in Rolly Romero, when it becomes clear, if it becomes clear, that Rolly's power and his kind of sharp shooting style doesn't deter Esau Cruz. So I'm going to go with Esau Cruz, but instead of stoppage, I'm actually going to go Esau Cruz via decision. I wouldn't be surprised by an Esau Cruz stoppage. I would be more surprised, but not totally surprised, if Rolly Romero drops Esau Cruz. And it would be something if Rolly Romero stops Esau Cruz, right? Rolly Romero would get a lot of cred, even though this is, again, Esau Cruz's 140 debut. Rolly Romero would gain some respect, some serious respect, if he's able to stop Pitbull, or really even if he's able to win this fight. If Rolly Romero can make this a distance affair and move in any way that the way Giovanni Cabrera did, and outbox Esau Cruz and maybe stick him and hurt him a couple of times and win a decision, even if that's the case, I think that it's gonna cause people to put some respect on Rolly Romero's name. I just think that Esau Cruz is going to win. But again, I'm not going to go with him via knockout. I'm going to take Pitbull via decision. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this one. What do you think about this matchup? It is intriguing for a lot of the reasons that I mentioned. I mean, Esau Cruz coming up in weight, Rolly Romero being the bigger fighter, being a hard puncher, somebody who poses a real power punching threat against Esau Cruz. Esau Cruz, in his pressure style, we could see giving Rolly Romero all types of discomfort. But yeah, let me know what you think about the matchup and how you see it playing out. And depending on who wins this fight, what is their future in terms of defending the title, given the politics of boxing, given this new PBC deal, will PBC be more willing to work cross-promotionally like they are with Canelo Alvarez versus Jaime Munguia? Are we going to see some more cross-promotional efforts, or is it still going to be a very insular, almost siloed affair with PBC? I really hope that at 140 specifically, they're willing to make some cross-promotional fights. That would be a lot of fun for us fight fans. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.